All right, family, we're live. Peace and chaos. You guys let me know in the chat if the sound is good. I want to welcome you all back to the Spiritual Shade Room, Nagaverse Network, and Camophis Academy. This is the True Occult newspaper. We are here to enter into the fabric of non-Euclidean physics, corresponding to the occult metaphysical faction of psycho-spirituality. Here we study the currents throughout history to the planet's Kundalini's repositories in the Samadhi state of the Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled lotus flower, that redeems the alchemical journey of the hero pursuing the immortal elixirs of the void. We also cover gematria, which is Jewish numerical mysticism, ritual symbolisms, and the social orders of the world, subconscious psycho-spiritual practice, retrocausal psychology, deity morphology, subatomic consciousness, and sciences of the black hidden light of Gnostic aeons, and many more mind-blowing phenomena. Today we have special guests, so we won't be getting into some of the hyperlucidity stuff. We want to hear from Mr. Greenfield himself. He is a ufologist, a author, editor, ceremonial magician, and a occultist out of Atlanta, Georgia. He's written many books. I have so many books I want probably you to speak on, later in the broadcast, but sort of the likes of the story of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, one of my favorites. The Secret Rituals of the Men in Black. I've been talking about this book on my channel, guys. How long have I been talking about this book? We finally got him on. In The Complete Rite of Memphis, which is an excellent book. That was one of the main books we covered last year with all of the Memphis stuff that was happening. But how are you, Mr. Greenfield? It's a pleasure and it's an honor, to be in your presence and to have you on this platform. You have no idea how long I've been mentioning your names in the ranks of other authors. That's, what I would call the juggernauts of this thing.
Well, I don't know that it's an honor to have me on, but I'm flattered. Thank you. I'll try to be worthy of that build-up. I could just sit here, and say, hi, people, buy my books, please. I'm poor. Look at me, my furniture is from my grandmother. I mean, what do you want?
Oh, no, we very much buy your books and we love it. We love it very much. If you would like right now, would you like to plug any of your websites or any links to donations early in the video? We'll do it again at the end, but I like to have that early if you know anything off the top of your head.
Oh, sure. My current book the title is hard to do. The Black Lodge book, the title of which it's a long title, but
right.
It's kind of an expose of the darker side of occultism. Actually, it's a very dark trip, but people need that trip. It's I'm sure we'll get into the secret chiefs, but it's the reverse reflex of the secret chiefs. It's those beings that are essentially ascended masters who are immortal outside of space and time, but who have chosen, for lack of a better term, forgive me, George Lucas, the dark side of the path. And I don't think they're anything like, Darth Vader, but that's my current book. And that will eventually be enfolded with Secret Cipher, the Euphonauts and Secret Rituals of the Men in Black in a combined edition. But you can get them all now individually, or you get the first two together. I think there's a Kindle edition, and I'm encouraging my publisher to do a Kindle edition of all of my books because I think it's outrageously books are outrageously expensive now. And for those
Yeah.
who are of the internet generation, we were talking about that before the program, you know, and can read a book comfortably off of a screen. I can't. Talking on screen, sure. Reading instructions or an FAQ, sure. But reading a book, I can't imagine not having a book to hold in my hands. So you can get currently you can get a copy of almost all of my books are in print. In fact, A Complete Rite of Memphis, which you mentioned, was out of print for a couple of years for reasons unknown to either me or my publisher.
I remember that.
And I complained to them, and they had a talk back and forth with the distributors. And I never got a reason, but the point is I got a message about 3-4 days ago that it's back in print. So I didn't believe it, and I pulled it up on the Amazon site, which is, you know, the most commonly, and it was back in print. But I scrolled to all editions of this book, and it had the first edition as a used book, which, by the way, authors get nothing from ordinarily. And it was selling for a 4-digit price, a used copy.
Wow.
4 digits. Now, I haven't ever written anything that's worth, you know, $3,422.
Whoa. Who was doing that?
I don't know, but that's, it's always been when my books go out of print, and I don't know about other people's books, but I assume it's the same thing. If it's out of print for a long time and it's all in demand, you know, it isn't a remainder table book, it quickly goes to a 3-digit, you know, price, usually $200-$300. But I've never seen anything 4 digits. I think that's outrageous, and nobody should buy it. Get the new edition for whatever it is, $19.95. I don't have anything to do with pricing, and enjoy.
Well, the information is worth it. Name that Black Lodge book one more time, just for the audience. The name of it.
Secrets of the Real Black Lodge Revealed. I say real to distinguish it from the David Lynch initiated/informed but fictional version. This is no fiction, folks.
Ooh, I need to get that. I need to look into that. Right? You guys make sure you get
that. You do.
And
I have this bottle of snake oil if you'd like to buy it. It's good for what ails you.
No, we appreciate you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, to those who may be new to your work, because I know you're a OG. That's what we would call you in the game. But some may not know like extensively of your accolades. You know, I've seen many interviews from you. I know a few things, but I know a couple of people may be new to what you do and what you've done. So if you can give a brief, you know, description or a little bit about yourself.
Well, the first thing that I would say is I've been at this for 60 years.
Lord.
And all that I have learned is that I have a lot to learn. Now, that may not sell books, but that is an honest appraisal. You get to a point where you realize how little even the most advanced students of this great work, that we really understand. And there is truth in the notion that you cannot really make sense of it until you surrender to that idea. I mean, my friends, the Newkirks, who did the Hellier series, they start out with one premise, and then they follow the synchronicities, and that's how all field investigations, whether it's of ghosts or demons, or in their case, goblins, or finding out the truth about flying saucers, or whatever your goal is. If you follow the synchronicities, the goal will change. The path is featureless, and the path is about being on the path.
Right.
Castaneda got that quite correct in Journeys to Zitlan, which Don Jose never does get to Zitlan, which was his hometown, which is kind of the point. But you do along the way pick up real, true knowledge with a capital K. If you don't just stick with the goal and have some damn form to fill out, like the ufologists in organized ufology have done now for my whole life, and they have solved nothing, because if you have a form, the form is going to ask particular questions. It's not going to go wherever the evidence leads. And so if you start out with a premise like flying saucers are extraterrestrial craft from the planet Bluco, and they're here to conquer the earth and look directly into the camera. It is a premise that has confounded me for, I guess I bought into that for about 5 years. And then I thought, wait a minute. The people that are saying this are all military and engineering types, people who are nuts and bolts to their core. So, of course, they're seeing this whole phenomena as alien, but not so alien that they can't wrap their nuts and bolts hands around, which means that it has to be somebody else's space rovers, just like lunar rovers and Martian rovers, but from some other source and more advanced, whatever that means,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tricky term. I mean, is our civilization more advanced than a shamanic society in the jungles of Brazil? I don't think so. But
Right. That's how I look at it as well. I think when we look at contemporary times and see what the ancients, were doing, some people will say that they were savage or they weren't as advanced. Now, I did notice, I saw in someone's book that it was kind of weird that we were in horses and carriages in like the 1800s, that we jumped 50 years later into jets and stuff like that. That is kind of strange, if you kind of look at the timeline between there. Do you believe that we came in contact, based on the works that you did, like finding the works of Pascal B. Randolph, names just like that, Crowley, OTO, because I want you to go into that in a second. But do you believe that somehow we gain some type of advancement, just like the ancients did at one point, by making contact through ceremony or intelligence? Or is this more of we're not as advanced as we think?
Well, we're not as advanced as we think. We do have enormous egos, but
yeah, we do.
Let me put it this way. I don't think the government has some special handle on this that they're keeping from the public. That just isn't part of my universe. But I think that something that approaches mystical vision and revelation has been a part of human history throughout, going back to the dawn of any kind of hominid that we are descended from. When I was growing up, and I don't know about you, we got the Neanderthals were this sort of primitive version of us. Now that's very much in revision, which pushes it back in time a long, long way in terms of art and probably something approaching language. And now, although it's still controversial, very controversial, the Homo naledi in South Africa that discovered by a highly reputable paleoarchaeologist, they are smaller than the Hottentot people. So they are not modern humans at all.
Right.
They don't have a huge brain pan, but they apparently, if you go by this scientist and his team's work, they buried their dead quite deliberately and under very difficult circumstances in the darkness of the way, way back in a cave. And they buried them. They didn't just toss them in a pit or something. And they buried them with things, just as later civilizations have done, as if they were contemplating an afterlife.
Right.
And not only that, but one child skeleton was found beneath what apparently was artwork these little beings did. Not anything sophisticated. It wasn't the Sistine Chapel. It was just, but it was art. It was an attempt to either write or express themselves artistically.
Right.
He or she, I think it was he, apparently died while in the act of making this drawing and was buried immediately beneath the drawing, but with the tool that he had used to carve it placed in his hand. What does that say about these little primitive people?
Right. More advanced, than what they're saying.
Yeah. I think there may have been the Graham Hancock thing. I think there may have been a pre-existing civilization. They keep pushing back the timeline. I don't think it's a proper thing that we have the habit of doing, of basing our notion of what is civilized on how big their kings built their pyramid.
Right.
That is hardly a good basis for saying civilized. There's even an argument that goes, if that's what they did, they took more care of their dead than their living. And that is not a mark of high civilization.
Great
It's
point.
a mark of servitude and superstition. So I think the big monuments are impressive, but that doesn't mean that was the apex of their civilization.
Right. You can't take modern mind and try to implement it into ancient thought, but you can take ancient thought and look at how we look at things in the modern mind. And I think sometimes we do that.
Oh, yeah. We do that with different civilizations today. I mean, we try to transpose values. And I'm not saying that people in any civilization don't have the right to have an opinion about very different civilizations. Say, Tibet and China are very different civilizations. China presumes to be the father and Tibet is the child. But and I think maybe if you're going to argue that, it might be the reverse of that, or Russia and Ukraine. I think the better claim to be the heir to the Rus Vikings, are the Kievan Rus. In other words, the Ukrainians not
Mhm.
the Russians. So
That's correct.
we get that throughout history, that there is an effort to judge always, almost always, based on, well, we know our civilization is the best that
Yeah.
history has done. To which I say, how's that working out for you?
Not well.
No,
Not
it's
well.
not.
Disarray, chaos, all type of stuff today. Well, let me ask this question. I want to jump right into it.
I
What
don't know.
happened?
I'm sorry.
What happened with the OTO? I just have to ask, like, what was the dilemma? Because from what I understand, when I started to read into magic, there was like, from the Vedic sense, they call it the Sagunic path, and then you have the Nirgunic path. It's like your ceremonial. You have to go through a rites of passage, and you have to go through, initiations and processes, and then you have the Sagunic, the Nirgunic, where you're self-initiating. It's more kind of like chaos magic, like you just take certain things from different culturistic traditions and you make your own thing out of it. But I had to base, I had to get structure into how I understand magic. And I used to read into books like what Crawley, Kenneth Grant, Michael Berdio. Later I got into your books as well, and I saw like the structured system of the OTO. Then I saw the bad television show Strange Angel, how they put it and everything. I'm like, whoa, maybe the OTO was doing satanic blood rituals. Is the Orders, Templars, Ori doing stuff like this, walking around with Baphomet masks and stuff like that? But to everyone, can you break down like what was the situation exactly with the OTO from your understanding, and what happened? Because I know that you're no longer a part of that organization. Or
I spent 20 years in it and reached a rather exalted degree, not the ultimate whatever, but close to, and knew all the people that were brand new, because at one time that was my job, to be the greeter. Hi, welcome to the OTO. It's going to be
really?
a lot of fun. The parties are good. The initiations are better. I will tell you this. The really negative stuff that you hear, satanic, their rituals are all orgies, blah, 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 blah. None of that's true.
Okay.
They're not that effective. A guy I know, Craig Heimbichner, wrote a book called Blood on the Altar, where it pretty well says, the OTO is the secret Illuminati survival that rules the world. And the chiefs of it are Allen Greenfield and Jim Wasserman. So I thought,
wow.
Well, he picked two Jewish names. Maybe that was coincidence, but I need to speak to this guy. And to his credit, when I told him the truth, I said, look, the OTO gets a badass reputation, but the OTO couldn't lead a Boy Scout march on a burlesque house. They are an ineffectual organization. Wow. And the one thing you can say about it is it's a big nothing burger. And I convinced him of it. His next book was a totally different thing. And I said, as for Jim Wasserman, who is now deceased, and we don't want to speak ill of the dead, do we?
Right. Nah.
Ding dong, the witch is dead, the wicked.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry. The devil made me do that. I said, Jim Wasserman and I couldn't stand to be in the same room together, much less him and me ruling the world. So I'm
I get it.
sorry to disabuse you, but he
No, it's
abuses me. Yeah, it was. I mean, we were bitter enemies, and
fine.
there's a lot of internal strife within the OTO. I don't know. A lot of people that were subject to that are no longer in the OTO. Either got thrown out or left, or in my case, you're fired. You can't fire me. I quit. When did you quit? Last summer. You have a mail. Oh, yeah, I saw that. It's just, let me put it in a broader context, because your viewers, listeners, whatever the right term is,
Both is fine.
I go back to radio days, so listeners is still a term. And now, the unexpected, brought to you by Lux Soap, the soap that makes dishwashing almost nice.
The golden days, yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of recordings from that, but I barely remember it. I mean, I was a little kid, very little, almost, a zygote, as it were. So the broader context is occult organizations, exceptions noted, tend to be first undemocratic. They're usually headed by someone who is no more elected than the Supreme Court. That is, they are ad vitam, for life, and appointments for life tend to lead to authoritarianism. And because all major occult organizations, and I include there the various types of OTO, but particularly the OTO Incorporated, and the Golden Dawn and its various claimants, the AA and its various claimants, they're all top heavy, and they all have a dogma. And dogma and for life leadership equals not necessarily yet a cult, but cultic in that direction. You start out with Bo and Peep, two interesting characters gathering a little following, and you end up with the Hale Bop suicides.
Yeah.
You start out with the People's Temple, and you end up with 1,000 people. Well, they say killing themselves, but I have a hunch that some of them didn't want to go along with the final step and got machine gunned.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
And apparently there are still members of the People's Temple. So if you want to come to my door, here's the deal. Beside the door is a katana. And I will greet you in the same manner that the late Jim Jones greeted you.
Oh, man.
So leave me alone.
What's going on, family? I see some people asking some questions. Just quick questions about what you just said. And shout out to Donut. I see Donuts in here. He asks, what does the AA stand for? Isn't it like Austrium or something like that?
Well, one of their ridiculous notions is they don't tell what it is except to their inner initiates.
Got it.
And the most common, and I've never been I was offered entrance into it. And at the time, I was a professional tarot reader. So Bill Breeze, the grand poobah of the OTO, said, well, you could be in the AA, his particular version of the AA. And I said, no, I can't. He said, why not? Being, the magician and all. And I said, because it says in your basic doctrine that you cannot sell your services. And what I do for a living, this is back in the early 90s, is I'm one of the people on the Psychic Friends Network on the graveyard shift to boot. And he said, oh, well, okay. I guess you can't be in. I said, I guess not. That's a true story.
Oh, wow.
But
could be anything. It could. I heard it meant the silver
Argentum astrum is the most common.
Argentum astrum. That's what it's called.
But it might even go back to ancient and accepted, one of the two major rites of Freemasonry in the United States. One of three, really. How to put this? The AA, the OTO, the Golden Dawn, Borderland Sciences, what have you, all of these organizations with the top-heavy structure, and the more initiations you've undergone, there you go. You had it back there. The more you've undergone, the more say you have in things. Tend to become authoritarian, tend to become dogmatic. And in the end, will only attract a very small number of people. If you put all those organizations together, you're talking about a few thousand people, something like the membership of the Socialist Workers' Party, which, if you want to look for high impact organizations, that's not where you look. Oh, you can't show the lawman. That's a trademark of OTO Inc. They went to the Supreme Court. And there you go. But I really think that a free illuminist approach to occultism is far more productive and rational, because everybody is on their own journey, but everybody needs to have a support group. And what free illuminism does, it says, we will guard you in your way. And free illuminists mean it. And because there are no teeth in free illuminism, in other words, nobody gets to tell anybody else what to believe, or how their membership works, or how they have to pay in order to attain the next initiation. Instead, they support one another, each in their own way, and that's the way it should be. And there you go. There's a picture that depicts exactly how it is in those organizations. People don't think that they're marionettes, but if they dance to the tune, they are. Not only that, at least in things that I'm privy to, they don't know.
That's why I
they
wanted to
think
ask.
They're actually on the road to attainment.
Right. So they don't know really.
No, but they swear oaths that clearly define that they are subject to the Grand Poobah. You know, Bill that was in my living room offering me the AA. I mean, that's, or the guy from Columbus, Georgia, that is now the Grand Poobah of one branch of the Golden Dawn. You know, I mean, Chick, he came to one of our events on Mount Arabia. I think it was a wedding. And I said, at the very end, I shouldn't have, but you know, the devil made me do it. I said, and let's have a hand. That was the way we ended everything. For Chick Cicero, the head of the Golden Fraud. And people, you know, they heard what they wanted to hear.
Well, Kenneth Grant also split from what I understand, the OTO. I think Crawley wanted him to be the head, but there was another guy, I keep forgetting his name, and he didn't want Kenneth Grant because he thought Kenneth Grant was mixing some stuff that wasn't original.
Carl Germer.
Yes.
Now, Germer didn't want to do anything with the OTO. He was strictly an AA person, but he got the franchise after Crowley passed on. And the thing about it is, the way I look at it, and I'm a generation down from those people, so, that's important to say. So I'm looking at it as an historian, not as a contemporary. I don't think there are any contemporaries left now. The way I look at it is, at the end of his life, that is from circa 1945 until his death in late 1947, Crowley had maybe a dozen people involved in the OTO worldwide. Let me repeat that. A dozen people worldwide. And any of the ones that he considered bright lights, he sort of said to them, you may be the next leader of the order. He said that he designated Germer as successor of a sort, but he pretty well set up Gerald Gardner to be the head of the OTO in Europe. He pretty much set up Grady McMurtry, who was only in England because he was a GI awaiting D-Day. So he made Grady McMurtry an exalted chief and told him something vague, that the day may come, I'm paraphrasing only slightly, the day may come when you're called upon to take the awesome office of the chief of the order. So you have all these people, basically anybody that visited Crowley and was kind and was of the white male persuasion. He said, oh, you're the next chief of the order. That's Crowley right to the end.
Oh, wow.
Bigot and desperate, I think is the right word to use.
I get it. So Kenneth Grant, from what I understand, was like one of the first ones to start to incorporate, Lovecraftian, ultra extraterrestrial intelligences applied to the same magical methods or ceremonies that they were doing, way back, Hermetic, Golden Dawn type stuff. Crawley, because Crawley did his own thing too. He got kicked out. And
Golden Dawn.
Yeah, Golden Dawn. He got kicked out, Golden Dawn, and he started doing his own thing. But
his version is he kicked the Golden Dawn out.
That's his version.
Yeah.
But
you can't fire me. I quit.
But I want to ask about what ultra terrestrial is, because you mentioned this term a lot from what I read in the secret rituals of the Men in Black. And then it goes into what the secret chiefs are and what type of, how is that connected to this whole thing, ultra terrestrial and the secret chiefs, those terms and the phrase. Well, how are these things connected?
The handful of people involved in some permutation of ufology eventually arrive at some kind of notion of a hidden hand, secret chiefs, if you will, people or non-people that are actually responsible for the various phenomena that the nuts and bolts people just find so undecipherable, so that they eventually go to, oh, well, the government knows, but they're
Right.
keeping it from us, which is a dead end street and has been for a very long time.
Right.
Probably was worthwhile in 1947, but somewhere in the 1960s, it had become obvious that that view was just not viable. Anyway, one of those handful of people who got it was an independent researcher who you will know his name and probably know about him, the late, great John Keel. Now, Keel and I had a kind of strange relationship, but Keel was a strange guy, and I'm just an ordinary guy. And like I often say, Keel didn't like to eat. And he told me that over an expensive meal that I bought him. And I thought, and he was on my turf, and I thought, this guy, or as Jerome Clark once put it, he said, if anybody in this field is one of them, it's Keel. And he was that strange, but he was also an investigative person by nature. And there are just a few people, then or now, that will really take the phenomena wherever it goes. So he coined the term ultra-terrestrial to contrast the data that the independent investigators were coming up with, as opposed to ET phone home, extraterrestrial, which implies for no reason at all, they come from other planets, first in our solar system, and then in our galaxy, and then in the universe, which anyone who knows a bit of cosmology or follows the JWST pictures of the closest we get, they're aware of what saying comes from a different galaxy implies. And the point is, there's nothing about the phenomena that bespeaks anything that has been seen or heard or experienced other than either right above the Earth or landed on the Earth. So why leap to extraterrestrials? But with the coming of certain aspects of quantum physics, namely various types of M theory, there may be others, maybe an infinite number of other universes with their own laws of physics and so forth. Many physicists are willing to go that far, but they say, but they're unreachable. Well, if there are an infinite number, which there may be, infinite means whatever you can imagine somewhere exists. Somewhere there is a method, a device, a technique, whatever, to penetrate from one reality to another. And I think what you're dealing with the secret chiefs who mean well, and ultra-terrestrials, some of whom mean well and some of whom do not at all, is that they portal from other realities, possibly multiple realities, and that all of the phenomena from ghosts or Bigfoot to UFOs are, and their denizens, and the Fae, all of that are different aspects of the same phenomena that is simply beyond our ability with our 5 rather limited senses to see as it really is. So they see something like what's on the screen right now. And you either see that as Ezekiel's wheel, or you see that as evidence of other dimensions, or you see that as an AI painting, or it's an endless number of things that you can say, but it's because most of our evolution, physical evolution, has taken place during a period when we could not afford to be distracted from finding something to eat while not getting eaten by something else.
Right.
Run away. Reproducing and thus perpetuating humanity.
Black
And
Forest theory.
well, it's just, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be 99 point something percent of the human history. So when we contemplate things that are outside of that focus, which is, I suspect, what our brains are built to discern under normal circumstances to keep us from getting distracted. Look, there's another reality, and the saber-toothed tiger eats him. End of human race story. Instead of, look, a gazelle, let's kill it. That has survival value. The other realities don't. Now, they may now, and I think it was before the program we were talking about the explosion of technical knowledge in the last 200 years.
Yes.
Well, there are explosions of different types of knowledge periodically through history.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will say is relatively radical, which is it's not that difficult to open a portal to other dimensions if you are a fairly consummate magician. The real problem is the way I teach it is I teach people to close those portals that they've opened when they're done,
Right.
rather than leave them open, as may have been the case in the famous L. Ron Hubbard and the illustrious. Yeah. I don't know that they closed their portal. It was clearly opened. I've done openings, but I do elaborate closings. So
Wow.
I
Is there?
think
Continue. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that there is a difference between the portals which are open from the other side
Mm-hmm.
and those that are open by magicians or mystics from this side. And one of the differences is who's in charge. In charge from this side, it depends on who does the ritual. And as long as certain precautions are involved, the magus that opens the portal is in charge. And the minute they cease to be in charge, which can happen through seduction, incubus, succubus, demons, whatever.
Right. Archons.
Well, that would be the Black Lodge.
Okay, we'll get into
Archons
that next.
are identical to the Black Lodge.
Okay, we'll talk about that next then.
Okay. Well, I mean, that pretty much is it. That
Okay.
gives the magician that ability to close it, whereas that which is open from the other side, I would assume it has to be closed by the denizens of other realities.
Get it.
And why they are here at all, whether they're here as leprechauns or UFO beings, which have certain similarities, or something entirely different, which is what I think is always the case, although we perceive it that way. I don't know their motives, and I don't even know what they are, but I do know that I don't know, except that I know that we see it through a limited set of senses and a limited set of assumptions.
Well, is it possible, before we go, because I got a lot of questions about the archons and the Black Lodge and the secret chiefs, we're going to be on that for a minute. Before we, shift gears to that, is it possible to open portals unknowingly just by, laying in your bed, sitting in a chair? Or does it take a actual schematics to magical formulas to open your awareness into these intelligences as they do so to open the portals?
Well, yes, you can do that through deep meditation, particularly jhana, known as Chan in China, and Zen in Japan. You can open portals through that. I'm not sure if you can close portals due to that. So you have things like the Bon religion of Tibet, which is, well, the Buddhists say it's demonic. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. The point is, anything that will open your chakra system to the universe is inviting other realms in. The thing is, when you're in a deep state of meditation, you're open to anything. And, well, that works. There's also this real mystics throughout history in all cultures seem to spontaneously become open to other realities. That has to involve opening portals, but they seem to be on a different wavelength altogether. I would say they are incarnate examples of candidates for the secret chiefs who are discarnate. In other words, they were human, but they have ascended and become post-human. It really gets into a complicated cosmology, but I think that all of the people that are the founders of great philosophies and forms of spirituality, probably to one extent or another, have been touched by the secret chiefs or by other dimensions or whatever. And some are only momentary, and some are the rest of their lives are that way.
Wow.
And some can handle it, and some die from it. You have a close example in Gopi Krishna, who wrote books about warning people about Kundalini. He eventually settled in, but he was just a sort of middle-level yoga practitioner who felt the Kundalini at his root chakra and thought, well, why don't I just let it go? And boom, full Kundalini. And he went from sage to sage and doctor to doctor, trying to figure out how to harness what was basically killing him. And I think you'll find lots of people that go insane, that say, oh, I just discovered it. And by the way, I am God. There are all sorts of ways people respond to these things, which is why the prerequisite training involved in something like, David Lynch, who in fictional form has talked about a lot of the same things I'm talking about, is a very advanced adept of transcendental meditation. Now, I've never done TM, and I also shy away from anything that charges for, services. I mean, my books are for sale because that's my profession. But any service that I provide is free. And that's
Oh,
the way
wow.
it should be. I mean, people will come to me for empowerments or whatever, and there he is. It wasn't free. And from what I hear, he also had a good time with the ladies that came to him. But that's not important. David Lynch is a lot more important because the system that he taught is based on thousands of years of Indian philosophy.
Oh,
The
wow.
term Maharishi in Sanskrit means great teacher. And I guess he was teaching the tradition, but he never claimed to be, as some of his contemporaries did, never claimed to be a god or, superhuman or whatever. He claimed to be a deep meditator who could teach deep meditation.
Right.
And now it's in the hands of second and third generation people, and I don't know. But if they charge, I wouldn't do it,
Wow. Wow.
It's
Well,
like I've never joined what is called mainstream Freemasonry because of its history of sexism and racism, which
yep.
has been severe. And I can't join anything that has that background. But on the other side of it, at least Masonic lodges are democratic. That is, among its membership, they elect their lodge masters for a year. It's like the alternative Egyptian rite, of which I am an exponent, just recently elected me to be the it's almost like saying Pharaoh, but I'm not I'm not the number one. I'm the number two person. The Grand Copta, which is a title that goes back to Cagliostro and has been used by successive generations of leaders of this tradition. But you're elected, and you're elected for limited times. I've got 2 years to do something with it or disappear into the infamy of history. So I hope that I am worthy of that challenge. But that just happened, and I sort of thought it was going to. But the WAEO is open to adults of all sizes, shapes, colors, and
Excellent.
orientation. So
Well,
it's even open to crazy folks like me.
I have a question about the Memphis Rite Lodge before we get into the Black Lodge. I heard that
Don't put them in the same sentence, please.
I know because I heard I did some research and they kind of like became ostracized as a lodge because I heard they had 99 degrees. Is that true? I don't know if that's true or not.
It was, well, it's complicated because in
Okay.
Cagliostro's time, there were a lot less degrees. When, well, he got eventually put in the pokey and died there by the Inquisition because he tried to set up a lodge in Italy. And in the 18th century, that was a no, 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 the Inquisition. And it was picked up by the Rite of Memphis, and degrees were added. And then it was picked up by the Rite of Mitzrayim, which is Hebrew for Egypt.
Right.
And then it became the combined rite, trying to get, so it was the ancient and primitive rite of Memphis et Mitzrayim. And it became a 95-degree system, which has since been added.
95.
I personally think, and in the back of my book, The Complete, that the word complete I spell as COMPLEAT because it's never quite complete, especially if you look in the back of the book, my take on how many degrees there actually are. I think it's an obvious answer, but It's lost in antiquity. There are 360. Why 360? Ask any astronomer or astrologer or anybody who believes that the Earth is round and can be divided into 360 steps, which is what the word degree means. So it's probably far beyond. In my book, I cover the 97 degrees, which were when the book was first published. That was the entirety of the right, although some degrees had been tampered with, maybe by John Yarker, who was frontal chief in the late 19th, early 20th century, I guess. It's like the intriguing degree before Yarker's time of adept of Sirius, referring to the brightest star in the sky.
Right.
And something that some tribal groups in West Africa, several actually, although most people talk about the Dogon, who, by the way, were curtailed about 15 years ago by Islamists who consider them to be pagan, because they talk about the star people who came down from Sirius, and
right.
They've been saying that for an awfully long time. And but the Bozo tribe and I think one other also has the same mythos, and they're all along the Niger River, which runs through several countries. It's a West African legend, mythos, religion, call it what you want. The adept of Sirius degree, which is probably very old, isn't in there anymore. It's listed as of the 1870s, 1880s, but I can't find it anywhere. And I suspect it was omitted because it contains some secrets that you probably can find in at least two of my books, one forthcoming. How's that for a sales pitch? Well, it's in the book that you said that you've just read or are reading now, how to do that invocation, although don't do it if you don't know what you're doing. It's not something for amateurs and can only be done one day out of the year. And I know people who've tried it at other times, and they get interesting subliminal effects. The same sort of thing you can get with the so-called God helmet, but actually producing the being Oannes, the amphibious being, the tutelary being of ancient Sumer, and under different names, India, Egypt, whatever. Do it with caution and don't jump right in. Learn it. If you happen to be an advanced at it, well, you don't need my book anyway, but buy it, you know. I mean, but keep it as a souvenir. I'll be glad to autograph it if you happen to catch me at a convention or something. There he is, one of the men in black. That picture was taken by Jim Mosley while driving.
Oh, wow.
Tim Beckley on the passenger side in the so-called death seat. This guy was shadowing Jack and Mary Robinson's apartment. Jack and Mary are forgotten in UFO history pretty much, but they were very key to developing some of the earliest versions of what became the ancient astronaut theory, long before the term ancient astronaut even came into existence. And I guess for that reason, they were under surveillance.
Interesting.
By the way, when they came around the block the next time, he was gone. He'd been there for 3 days. No bathroom breaks, which solid man in black. I don't think that they are exactly real. In some cases, they seem, this one of Keel's cases actually, where this guy they nicknamed Tiny, a huge man at the Cape May, New Jersey, which was a fairly remote area in Keel's lifetime. He came to these people's house with some premise. The men in black always do. You know, I'm with the Department of Investigation or whatever, dressed in black, but with, I don't know, pasty white features. I don't mean as in a Caucasian. I mean as in white, and as in unhealthy, as in. And as he's doing this interview, he keeps looking at his watch. And then abruptly, he terminates the interview. And he says, I've got to go. Like he's discombobulating, not just mentally, but disintegrating physically. And he goes out of the door, which is at the end of a cul-de-sac. The people are kind of astonished, so they sit there for a few seconds. Then they go to the door to see what kind of car he's driving. No guy, no car.
Wow.
Let me repeat that. No guy, no car. Those, I think, are what a lot of the men in black are. They're tulpas. They may resemble an existing human being, but they are not real in the sense that human beings are real. They are thought forms from something or someone at a distance, and they have a limited, I won't call it lifespan because I'm not sure they're alive as such.
Yeah.
But they have a limited time existence. And that's where a lot of the men in black cases come from.
Wow, you just dropped with that, because about a couple of years ago, I was looking into tulpas. They call them servitors, and the connection with egregores. And, you know, there's a big difference between both. So you're saying this is like a projection of some sort of these people that's connected to what could be intelligence is for the secret.
Yeah. I would say more likely from the Black Lodge than from the secret chiefs.
Let's
secret
get into
chiefs
it.
were more likely, would be more likely to manifest in some more subtle way, like a series of synchronicities, which, if you follow them, bring you that much closer to truth with a capital T. And that has been true throughout history. They believe in whispering help to human beings who they once were, not in interfering or enslaving or anything of that sort. Whereas the Black Lodge are people of almost equal attainment, but who have chosen to be manipulative and to keep other people from becoming the discarnate forms that they are. That almost is always true, which is why the yin-yang symbol has it's white on one side, black on the other, but within the white there is a black dot. You can see it in the Korean flag. And within the black side, yes, there you go. The black side, there's a white dot, because there's always a trace of the Black Lodge and the secret chiefs in each other, because essentially they're the same thing, but they've chosen different paths. Aleister Crowley, who is not nearly as reliable a source as his followers claimed that he is, said that he thought that the secret chiefs were far more advanced. But it's very difficult to be sure about that. Yes, there's Lam, and Lam, of course, is associated with the word lama. It was something he envisioned during his extended New York stay. He came over on the Lusitania, which on its way back got torpedoed by the Germans and sank. So he stayed in America for quite some time until the war was over and had this vision courtesy of one of his Scarlet Women. And sure enough, whether because of his vision or in tandem with it, the gray aliens start to show up, first in fiction. The notable pulp fiction magazines of the period start to show those. Then in, accounts similar to his own, that is his trans-channeling thing. And then as what seem to be physical beings that have a habit of abducting humans and performing medical tests on them, which are, in my opinion, more sexual than medical, and also designed to elicit fear, which seems to be what fuels them. Again, they may be projections, in which case they need to be fueled. And if they're of the Black Lodge, the best fuel is fear. So one of the things that is taught in magic is be not afraid. Be meditative when you enter into a magical situation, even if it becomes difficult. Know what to do, but stay calm. Same advice given to airline pilots in, God forbid, when they're in trouble.
Yeah.
The voice stays even all the way to the, to the ground, hopefully.
Well, since you just said that these gray aliens and the way that their image is burned into the minds, now of the social norm in this age, could it be that the Black Lodge created some type of egregore and brought these beings as tulpas into the inception of what an alien is known as in the minds of humanity now, today, 2024?
Well, yeah, I think that is the case. I think every mythos that we develop, the mythos develops first, and then the Black Lodge, for their own rather sinister purposes, will manipulate that image into something that resembles our reality to whatever extent they want it to. If they want it to be gray aliens, people will see gray aliens. If they want it to see gods and goddesses, they'll see gods and goddesses. If they want to see the Fae, they'll take them to Magonia. At the same time, the secret chiefs usually don't do that sort of thing. And if they do, it would probably be, apparitions of the Virgin Mary or whatever that bring a warning, usually, about don't have a world war, you'll be sorry, which seems rather vapid. But if that was, there's one that's being investigated by the Catholic Church right now. They take forever to investigate these things. But this is one that took place in Serbia. I'm sorry, maybe that was a Freudian slip of some sort. In Bosnia-Herzegovina, before vicious internecine war broke out there. And it's a country that was fairly content to have a Christian and a Muslim population, and the Christian population was divided into Orthodox and Roman Catholic populations. And they all got along okay. I'm not saying they were, buddy-buddy, because they did remain distinct groups, but they, I guess, respected one another. And what is taken to have been the Virgin Mary appears. And what is her message on this occasion? She keeps warning about the war to come, and to watch out for the war to come, and to not get involved in a war. And the people there, first, the believers, the Roman Catholics, were saying, "What's this about? We can't deny Mary and Violet saying that this is something we should worry about, but there's no war going on here. What are they talking about? China or something?" And then everybody in Bosnia, and then a short time later, every one of these groups of people was at war with one another in a blood feud that goes back to the early Middle Ages. That is not likely to have been coincidence. And for those of us who are disinclined to believe at least the virgin part of that, it probably was a projection from the secret chiefs to try to, because they exist, as does the Black Lodge, outside of space-time as we understand it. They know the past, the present, and the future. But they don't want to dictate the future. They just want to warn if there's something bad about to happen, or perhaps inform if there's something really good about to happen. Black Lodge, of course, has the opposite motivation. So
I get it.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
If long-windedly.
No, I wasn't long-winded. It was a very good answer. Let's get into a little bit of the rituals with the Black Lodge, because I noticed that they're taking on this theme of promoting, Nephilim type images. You see all of these sculptures popping up in different, areas now. I don't know if this is connected with them. I'm gonna assume it is, because it is foreign and ultra terrestrial. They're real grotesque, when they make the sculptures, and they're increasing, and nobody's talking about it. But when it comes to what or who's in communication directly with the Black Lodge, I think somebody was asking the question. We keep hearing about strange rituals and connected to Hollywood and, the political arena. Is there something with the sex magic, especially in connections to intelligences outside of space and time? Is there something to what some magicians are coining the term sodomic gateways that these people have to engage in and bring certain celebrities and political figures or whatever throughout the same type of ordeals of that type of ritual?
Well, of course, by definition, the actual Black Lodge and the actual secret chiefs are no longer incarnate human beings. Some of them probably go back to early shamanic times and ascended long since. I mean, one of the interesting, and it has survived in shamanism to this day, one of the interesting criteria of becoming a shaman is you have to have had a near-death experience and survive. Well, near-death experiences are one of my areas of interest. And the fact is, anyone who's done that has touched the infinite. And you don't touch the infinite without coming away from it with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. What you do with that determines which lodge you're in. But there are proto-lodges of the Black Lodge, and then there are what I would call useless lodges. That's my polite term for them, since we're live. That just don't. I don't think they're black lodges, but they are. The most that they can do is inculcate a knowledge of ethical structure in its membership, which is good. We could use some more ethical culture in our present day world. Wow, that's the original edition of Secret Cipher. That was my first book.
Yeah, I have it.
Well, you have a rarity. It's probably if you ever want to sell it, it's probably a 3-figure sale. But
oh, really?
Oh, it's been out of print because the publisher and some of the authors that worked for them, Illuminate Press, died under very mysterious and suspicious circumstances. Not very long after this book was published. Carrie Thornley was one of their, and a friend of mine was one of their authors. And under the name J. Katz, Saucers of the Illuminati was one of their works. And I knew him, and he died under very mysterious circumstances. And my current book on the Black Lodge is dedicated to Ron Bonds, who was the great mover and shaker at Illuminate Press, and also gave me my first break to move from being a writer to being an author with this book.
Awesome.
He died under very mysterious circumstances. And with him went Illuminate Press. It's like the people around him, for whatever reason, didn't continue it. So one of the few places where weird stuff could be published, where you could get a book about the black helicopters, but also about the men in black. That was, there are a limited number of publishing houses that'll touch that stuff. And after Ron died or was killed, I guess there are less now. I mean, I warned my publisher, I said, I've somehow they've managed to keep me around. Why, I don't know, but I'm glad. I'm not going to knock it. But you're likely to have trouble when you publish this book. And he said, no, I'll never do another book on the Black Lodge because it's not really funny. He had, and to some extent, ongoing problems in his personal life that coincided with publication of the book. Wow. And to this day, there are all kinds of little annoying errors that no matter how many times the book was, I mean, I have no skills as a proofreader but I did a run through, and I even spotted things that look like an AI written book, which it's certainly not. But, and then when the book was first online, it kept disappearing in various places, First, I would get messages from people because I'm on X, formerly Twitter, every day. And people would say, well, I tried to buy your book, but it isn't up. So I'd call the publisher and pester them, and they'd say, okay, we'll check it out. And it would be back up, but it would be off in another place. That clearly is interference. And who's going to interfere with a book about the Black Lodge?
Right. Well, you got me doing the Birdman hand rub with the version I got. So I have to look into that. But as far as, because I know in this book, just going back to what I was saying, like the not the proto, societies you were saying, the ones that are useless, the ones that are orchestrating certain things and going under to make it look like it's from a different organization when they manipulate certain people in events. I'm not saying, they're involved directly with everything, but I think they have their hands in Vanguard, BlackRock, all of these different big time companies buying up everything. And there's different secret cryptocracies, to use Michael Hoffman's word, that do go or send people to suppress information like the book that you just released. And they also will go to the extent of having a very magical, systematic way of killing people on certain dates pertaining to gematria that I've been making chronicles of on this channel and the channel I had before it was removed. Before I mentioned a certain name. Her last name is Twyman. I won't say her first name, but I'm pretty sure.
Her. I knew her.
Yeah, I can't say her name anymore. But I was chronicalizing, if that's a word, all of these killings. And you were the first person I came across, excuse me, to use gematria in a significance towards ultra-terrestrial intelligence, or whether it's what did Blavatsky called it, the Mahatmas or
Mahatmas, which just means great souls.
Yes.
Or they had their own terms. I don't like the term Great White Brotherhood, because being from the South, the Great White Brotherhood are the guys with the sheets over their head.
Right.
One time my father was driving us in Alabama, and there were hooded Klansmen. That's not legal in Georgia, but I guess it is in Alabama. On the side of the road with signs or something. And my father gunned the engine and drove off the road and drove like bowling pins.
Right.
He didn't hit any of them, but they sure had to jump out of the way. So I don't use that term except as a reference. But Madame Blavatsky wouldn't have had any problem with that, because she was horribly racist. In fact, I think you can attribute to her the lack of recognition for a very long time of P.B. Randolph, who is really the great American mover and shaker of sexual magic. I mean, that's there's no other person earlier than him that describes in detail, for his teaching to his own students, not published at the time, although I have since published them out of respect for him, how to perform sexual magic in order to have visions of the gnosis. And by the time it got around to Crowley, somehow mysteriously Randolph's name is omitted from the Gnostic saints, whereas I think that he probably should be considering the orientation, if not the practice, of the OTO. He should be first in line. Of course, Crowley put himself first in line, but that's another story. First and last. The last line is, and Sir Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, well, it's interesting with Randolph and a lot of other people when it comes to like melanated people into the occult, because a lot of ceremonial magicians didn't know that there were black Thalamites in Atlanta. And when they heard of it, they wrote an article on it, like kind of making fun of it, like it was a joke, and with us going into this wokeness era, what they're using these vague terms to implicate what they really feel, whether it be, race, sex, religion, or whatever these things are, gender, all of these things. It seems like in the magic circles, there's always an omittance to the contributions of melanated people that did things, whether it was hoodoo, because I see Michael Berdio speaks highly of different magicians that were melanated and passed down secrets, whether it's voodoo or hoodoo. And I saw Kenneth Grant giving recognition, to Typhonian Kushites from way back then. But why do you think that suppression is imminent? Is it just purely racism, or is it something else?
I think it started out as racism.
Okay.
But I think that now it's habit. I mean, Atlanta is a predominantly, as you put it, melanated city. And when I became Master of Euless Lodge number 10, OTO Incorporated, there was great fluidity and certainly no barriers to membership for any adult who wanted to come in. I even thought for the Gnostic Mass, they should allow children. They were against that. But it was almost entirely male and female, heterosexual white people. And I said, in this city, that won't do. We should do outreach to all communities in Atlanta, gay community, lesbian community, Black community, as it would style itself. And we did. And for the 3 or 4 years that I was the lodge master, which is exactly what I told Great Poobah. I said, I'm not doing more than 3 years. I don't like being in charge of other people. But it gradually became something that reflected the real Atlanta, which is, as it used to be called, the town too busy to hate, which is not quite true, but it's at least aspirational, So after I passed the torch reluctantly to a person that I knew was going to be a disaster, because he's a psychotic and also a drug dealer, or a psychotic drug dealer, or a dealer in psychotic drugs, whatever, which it reverted to being, mostly boys and mostly of the white heterosexual persuasion. It's tough to do. It's also tough if you are of a certain background to reach out to people of a different background. It has not been true in free illuminism. I would say the balance is 50-50. It's all, as the song goes, black and white together. And that's the way it should be. I mean, we have lodges that are predominantly Moorish scientists. We have lodges that I imagine they're all white because they're in Montana. And hell, what else is there?
I get it.
All 17 people in Montana, except for the 6 Indians, Native Americans, are probably lily white, like the flower, white lily flower.
Yeah.
To make cornbread. Well, it doesn't fit at all.
Well, we also talked.
But back to Randolph, I think there was conscious censorship from the Theosophists. First, because in the beginnings of the Theosophical Society, in fact, before it was organized, which, by the way, was in New York, it was not in Egypt or in India, where she and Colonel Olcott spent a lot of time doing mediumship, which
probably in the Burning District, in New York. The Burning District probably started there in New York.
I'm not sure.
Albany.
I'm not sure at this point. I can tell you the later history of it in New York, but they were upscale, so it was probably, I don't know, Midtown Manhattan. I mean, so anyway, they made a contact in the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light. And they were admitted to the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light by a Coptic magician who went by the name Paulus Medamon. Now, I'm not sure that that wasn't a magical name, something I don't use very much. I mean, I have one, Tauser Hasarim, and the only reason I've kept it is because it was conferred on me by Dr. Michael Bertio.
Yes.
And we have not been in touch in a long time, but I have heard he thinks well of me, and I certainly think really, really well of him.
Me too.
In any case, I don't know if it was Medamon or someone else, but they got kicked out of the HBFL. And that's where they suddenly discovered Theosophy and went to India and basically played a major role in the decolonization of India, which, considering what has happened, you have three countries, Bangladesh and India and Pakistan, all of which hate one another, are threatening nuclear war. I keep saying, the Theosophical Society, Gandhi was influenced by them. How's that working out for you? I keep saying that more and more. Is it really working for you, But they came to hate the organizations that were associated with the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light. Wow. Number one was the Brotherhood of Euless, which was P.B. Randolph's organization. And it is said that Madame Blavatsky knew when he died, whether it was by suicide or whether he was killed by a disaffected member, is debated, and frankly, we'll never know in all likelihood. The guy confessed, but there ain't been a murder in history that we don't have more confessors than, He
was shot, right?
He was shot in the head. And she was said anecdotally to have said, the N-word is dead. And that reflects her point of view. When the work was taken up by Louis Maximilian Bimstein, who went by the name, am I forgetting that? Max Theon, which means great God.
Oh, Max Theon, yeah, I know that.
He was an Eastern European Jew who moved to, somewhere in the Maghreb, in what's now Algeria, but would have been part of French or Spanish Moorish country back then in the 1800s. He founded a branch and made the grand tour of Europe. And I suspect that half of the people, because it was only a handful of people in the Golden Dawn or in the various German organizations that were around, some of which became pre-Nazi organizations, some did not. One of the people that he seems to have touched bases with was a Scottish distiller who lived on the banks of Loch Ness, which I love saying it in the Scottish manner. Loch. Aye, that was on Loch Lomond. You take the high road, So in Loch Ness, where Beluscan, which was at one time Aleister Crowley's home, which is burned down twice, which I think probably should be a lesson to his devoted followers, but apparently not. I didn't do it. I haven't ever set foot in. Maybe it was Nessie, breathing fire. And so much for Crowley. Now I can go back to being the number one up here. Yeah.
Right.
So Peter Davidson became the outer head of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light outside of Egypt. I don't know if it continued there or not, because as long as Egypt was essentially a subject country to Great Britain, off organizations like Freemasonry, and I say off only because of governmental restrictions outside of the Muslim League type of approach to things, were able to flourish. Now I'm not sure they would even be legal. And so I don't know whether the Hermetic Brotherhood or not survives. I do know that the Coptic Gnostic Church, or the Coptic Church, continues to be a minority, but a large minority in Egypt, large enough that they really haven't been run out of the country, because they're the native Egyptians, as we were discussing earlier. And in any case, outside of Egypt, perhaps covering the whole world, Peter Davidson and his somewhat lesser associate became the head of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, and they continued to publish a very respectable newsletter called The Occult something or other, but that was geared towards a British audience. Then, for reasons that are not totally known to me, but the clue is that one of his assistants, Thomas Burgoyne, went with him.
Oh, I know who that is.
They moved to North Georgia, which is about 50 miles from where I am right now, and set up a colony there. They apparently had a falling out, and Burgoyne went to California and founded the Church of Light and wrote the first volume of a seminal book of that time, The Light of Egypt.
Yep.
The second volume is attributed to him, but attributed to him post-incarnate. Burgoyne was a more cringeworthy character than Davidson. Davidson continued in Georgia, but knowing that he was in essentially rural Georgia, he sort of Christianized his publication, changed the name to the Morning Star, which of course was the rival of the Theosophical Society's Lucifer, because it means the same thing.
Yeah.
But was more palatable to people in North Georgia. And when I realized that I had read Randolph's seminal work, Euless, in Euless Lodge, and nobody else in the lodge, including the lodge master who found it in his father's library, had ever read Euless, because I read it and I was already an initiate of the OTO, not at the highest level at that point, but I thought, this is a candid, if Victorian decorative description of sexual magic that no one would mistake for anything else if they were, magically initiated to the point of reading this, which was as Randolph put it, printed, not published for the, the inner circle of the membership. I suspect that Carl Kellner, who is sometimes has it attributed to him as the founder of the OTO, they seem to be distancing themselves from that. But what can I say? When they got around to doing Gnostic Saints, Randolph wasn't on the list. Kellner is. He's a fine, upstanding Germano-Anglo person. Get the picture? So,
Is it fine, upstanding German?
they misspelled his name, but that's okay. He's also very wealthy, apparently. So that,
well, there you go.
But then it passed to Royce, and then it depends which strain. Is it the Church of Light that put out its own black and white tarot deck, or their Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, or the Celestial Lodge of Sirius, which I support? Well, I don't mean I financially support them. I mean, I'm in favor of the Celestial Lodge of Sirius as being a successor to the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light. But, none of these things that I support have any grand poobah, me included. I just am not into that. So if they have a free illuminist non-structure, I support them if they, don't have some, I don't know, strange, kooky approach to, their work. I mean, there are some that are flat earthers that I probably would not be too supportive of. But
you don't like the flat earthers?
I don't dislike them, but I think that they're kind of wrong. And
I'm gonna get off of earther. I always tell them, don't ask me.
Off of earther. Well, then you're on the planet Muscary, which is formerly known as Mars. As I stole that from Bill Maher. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. So that brings us kind of into the 21st century, I guess.
Yeah, well, I want to have one more last question about Randolph. What happened to his son Osiris? And there was like, or didn't continue anything? There was no trust, or because I know he had two wives.
In his will, he left the organization in trust for his son Osiris Buddha Randolph upon his attaining his majority, which in those days was always defined as 21, at least in the United States. And he left it in trust in this interesting document, which constitutes a will, really, called the, well, it's in the back of that Randolph book, I think, that you held up there.
Yes.
So nicely of you to do so. It was the triple something or other. The triple, it was Rosicrucian, not Kiwanis, but one of those others, and the Euless order. Basically, he left it to the very considerable body in San Francisco. He was at that time living in Cincinnati, which was a power center from that time until right now. By the time, well, let me put it this way. His wife, Kate Corson Randolph, seemed to continue to claim ownership or stewardship anyway during her son's minority during his, his pre-adult period. And by the time she was a doctor and sold as doctors did in those days, sold snake oil and potions and continued to claim the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light. But sometime around 1902-03, the head of one of the claimants to the Rosicrucian order, another top-heavy order that has two rival bodies, came to her, and by their lights, this is the one in Pennsylvania, not the AMORC, which was a much more successful organization in the long run.
Yeah.
Bought the rights to all of Randolph's work and hence to the HB of L by their reasoning from Kate Randolph. Meanwhile, Buddha Randolph went to med school, apparently 20th century med school, not 19th century, sort of honorary sort of snake oil, which is where the practice of medicine and especially dentistry, it was in its somewhat formative period.
Right.
You didn't want to have surgery unless you were a very tough person. He's got a heart attack. Amputate. I don't think so, Lucy. Oh, that's not what. I'm so sorry.
Those hard times.
Yeah, hard times for real people trying to be real. That's the editorial. That's the end of the editorial. So he chose not to take up the mantle, I almost said the cross, of heading the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light. Instead, he took up a medical practice. His practice was at Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is an adjunct of Johns Hopkins University, which is where I believe he got his MD. And the curious thing, there's an intersection there, not one that I'm real close to, but my uncle, William Greenfield, MD, was also resident there. Probably, I don't know if they crossed paths or not. Osiris Randolph did not live a long life. I think he died in his late 50s. But my uncle was there from the 1930s until his death in the 1950s. So they may have crossed paths, but it's a big school, and I'm not claiming that they were palsy-walsy. Well, I kind of knew Osiris Randolph, and he said, I'm going to leave this to Allen, just like Israel Regardie left the Golden Dawn to Allen.
I get it.
I used to do a skit about people that visited Israel Regardie on his deathbed. And actually, there was no deathbed. He keeled over into his soup and having dinner with Christopher Hyatt, I think. But so the two claimants, and I'm not going to go into names. One at a time, they walk into Regardie's room and they say, Israel, get well. I want to be your successor. He said, oh, okay, you are my successor as head of the Golden Dawn. And he drops dead, seemingly. And the guy goes out and says, whoopee, I'm going to run the Golden Dawn. 10 minutes later, the other guy, the one that heads the claimant in Europe, walks in. He says, Israel, Dr. Regardie, before you pass to the next plane of existence, can you make me head of the Golden Dawn? And Regardie opens his eyes and says, yes, You are the official head of the Golden Dawn, bar none, worldwide. And the guy leaves going, whoopee, I'm the head of the Golden Dawn. And then I walk in and say, hello, Uncle Izzy. How's tricks? He said, not so good. I'm having hallucinations. And I said, I beg your pardon? He said, I thought I gave the Golden Dawn to, and I named the two guys. And
Yeah.
I thought, how horrible. You're the head of the Golden Dawn from now on. And he died.
Oh my God.
It's a long skit, and I'm sure that it offended those guys. But so what? You know, I mean,
They'll get over it. They'll get over it.
I hereby make the Golden Dawn open source.
Well, I know we're getting close to the end. I have a question. You're in Georgia. Have you ever heard of Bobby Hemmett? The first time I've heard, he's a occultist out of Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah. I think I've actually. I'm not sure because he has a magical name, I believe, but I believe he has a group, and his group used to come to Mount Arabia, and also my ex's ex house. She would have sort of once a month have pagan weekend. Now I'm not a pagan, but it attracted all of the weird occult people.
Sounds right.
So I believe they showed up at those events as well.
Oh, okay.
Down in the opium den. I can say that now because it's no longer the case, but we did. I don't do, nor have I ever done.
Got to make a disclaimer.
But I went where the action was, and the
Right.
stoners were all down there. And let's face it, in the occult world, there are a lot of stoners.
Yeah, I was getting lit down there.
Yeah.
That was real lit.
Contact lit, I would say, to be in that room. You know,
Right.
yeah. Would you make me a bishop? No.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave it up to if anyone wants to have a question. If you want to stay, I know we're almost at 2 hours. I can put the link in here and they can come on stage, but that might extend it if we keep things brief because we want to get out of here in a few, not 30 in an hour from now. But if you guys, I'm gonna put the link in there. Please ask a sparing question if you would like to ask a question, and if not, we're gonna get ready to close out. And we appreciate everything that was shared. One of the best interviews I've ever done. I'm gonna go ahead and give you that. I'll give you that right beside.
I want to announce my candidacy.
So much knowledge and untied things that I always had questions about, especially with Pascal Randolph. A lot of people don't have that.
Pascal Beverly Randolph.
Yes. Because when I was listening to Bobby Hemmett, he introduced me to you and Pascal Beverly Randolph. And that's when I started to go a little bit more deeper in my research in the occult, because I never seen quite an approach, especially with sex magic, because people stray away from that. Bobby was real adamant, saying that there are certain properties that's in, I guess you would call the yoni fluid, that is essential to ascension consciousness, type of
Crowley, to the contrary, he thought, typical of Crowley, the male elixir is what matters.
Yeah.
The female elixir is just gluten, and that's before gluten. I mean, it's just
I didn't know that.
He was a very, very man of his times, and fancied himself upper class. He wasn't. He was middle class, but very class conscious Englishman who fancied himself aristocracy.
Oh, well, that does surprise me because he said a lot of things in books that was kind of weird. I think he spoke so much in riddles that some things went over people's head, but I think some of those things he really meant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't like Jews. He didn't like black folks. He didn't like anybody who wasn't him.
I see.
Didn't like women either. He liked to be around women because they were useful, but then he liked to be around guys too. So, you know, whatever floats your boat, everything floated his boat.
Everything. Well, I'm not seeing nobody enter it. They're kind of slow getting up.
They don't want to talk to me. They tuned out long ago. There's nobody watching.
No, that we have one of our highest peaks in views in this video on my channel since I started it. So they were definitely tuned in.
Does it have a K after it?
No, I have never made K in a live video, but I guarantee you it's going to be in Ks. Oh, multiple Ks.
Oh, well, I just asked because buy my books. Subliminal, buy my books. I really like to order pizza once in a while and can't afford it. Buy my books. I also want to make a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Buy my books. Buy my books.
Well, we appreciate you. Can you actually plug one more time something?
I never plug my own stuff. I only talk about, other people's stuff, like the Braves and the Falcons.
I don't want to put, because I got the information.
The Hawks. I like the Hawks. They don't win, but they do play.
They're getting better. They're getting better.
No, they
are. They're getting better. They'll be good in a couple of years. You got to give them time. I didn't know if this website was correct. It start with an MEWE.com/P.
Oh, no. I got out of that because it was a pay site, and again, I'm poor, and B, it's full of the QAnon people, and you might suspect from things that I've said that I am just not a QAnon person.
Me
either. But if you want to tune into me, there's several ways to do it. You can go on my Twitter feed. Like I said, it's updated every day. In fact, there's a thing about this program that said, upcoming in a couple of hours, Allen does his routine. Okay. And another way is I do have a developing website that it's a Wix site, but and it's not fully done, but there's a lot of good information on it because I had a closed site for years that I basically cut and pasted a lot of stuff from there, and as an opening round, put it on the Wix site. So I think at the bottom of my emails now, it has that address on it. And finally,
it's in the link. They got it.
Okay. So finally, if you just Google my name, I'm an Allen, Allen. Something my parents did as a little joke, not an Allan, not an Allen, Greenfield. My father added the I when he came south, wisely, I think. So it wouldn't be Greenfeld as my older uncles and aunts were. And if you Google my name, you will find there are hundreds of entries, some of them even reasonably accurate, having to do with me, podcasts, whatever. And if they're really curious about me, tell me on X, formerly Twitter, and I can send you a hot list of programs that I've done going back to the 1960s. Of course, most of those are not online for obvious reasons.
Right. Okay. We do have one question. I'm going to combine them. What do you think about the Vatican? The thing about people seeing entities, and they released that article I sent you, the Vatican guidelines of them saying that they put a warning out to people that a supernatural event was coming.
Well, I kind of already alluded to that in talking about the apparition of, I think it's called Srebrenica. I don't know. And I'm probably mispronouncing that. And I have a lot of friends in Serbia and Croatia, so I have to be a little bit, they're among my best buds. Yeah. And so it seems to me that they gave a lot of attention to the ongoing investigation of that particular apparition said to be of the Virgin Mary. They haven't decided whether it's for real or it's Memorex, as they used to say. And I think that may have occasioned this particular thing, but it's pretty clear that the Vatican has been concerned that it might be a challenge to Catholicism if, for example, paranormal research, parapsychology, becomes a mainstream science. If quantum physics, which is the majority view in physics circles today, but which undermines a lot of fundamentals about the nature of things, becomes the orthodoxy, as I think it is becoming, and then goes a step further, the many worlds interpretation, which I think is more likely than not. And perhaps even, since there are so many UFO sightings, and I don't think there are any more than there've ever been, I think they're more focused on, that might raise questions for the Catholic Church about life elsewhere. And, if the Christ came here and gave the nod to Peter, what did he do on Mars? What did I mean, it's just, it gets into things that have theological implications. And I think they're trying to be on top of that. And, I don't think that's sinister. I think that's a very large and very old organization trying to keep up with the times. Some people seem to think it's a sinister thing or about to be the great revelation. And that isn't the way these things work.
I think the Jesuits, to me, I think they're right under them. I think they were very sinister from what I read in books and from research into their occult secrets. Them coming up under, I do think that they're sinister. But if I'm looking at the whole entire, not every Catholic is sinister or people in the back. Yeah.
Let me put it this way, and I'm not going to get around to defending Catholicism. It's not my creed. I'm Reformed Judaism at the temple down the block, and y'all come, you hear? But it's open to everybody, even children, unlike the OTO. But where was I before I got on the temple on Peachtree?
You said you don't want to defend.
Oh, the Jesuits. Okay.
Yeah, the Jesuits, yeah.
There are 1 billion Roman Catholics in the world. I don't know how many of them are, go to church on Easter or when they get married or when they get buried, and how many of them are devout Catholics. Yeah. But I would expect any organization that has 1 billion members
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Islam has close to 2 billion.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have bad apples. And bad apples,
Mm-hmm.
the Talmud says, birds of the feather flock together.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, maybe some orders within the Catholic Church are dominated by child molesters. I'm not saying something radical there. That's something that's news. Or maybe there are those who want to see, because they believe in their faith, to see the Catholic Church become what the word Catholic implies, the universal religion, church. But that doesn't mean that that's typical of ordinary Catholics, or for that matter, of the priesthood or the Pope or any particular person. And if you hear it on QAnon, that doesn't mean that it's true, because I'm pretty sure QAnon is directly in the pay of the Black Lodge.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about how the Black Lodge funds these things, but if you were of a mercantile sort and knew the future, what would be your first acquisition? It would be playing the stock market, because it wouldn't be playing, it would be knowing. Yep. So the Black Lodge and its corporeal, sinister human followers, many of which are mercenaries, many of which are in the mafiosi type underworld.
Assassins.
Well, I don't know if the assassins still exist, but let's say the descendants of the assassins. There are even a couple of schools, as I talk about in the Black Lodge book, that they seem to sponsor, so to speak, because they want aspirational beings, that if they're going to be aspirational, they don't want them going to the other side. They want them either dead-ended or okay. So I think QAnon is directly in the pay of the Black Lodge. They're quite capable of funding through numbered accounts, et cetera, a great deal of mischief. We didn't talk about the thing that they most want, and we were going to talk about it, but maybe some other time. Yeah. Their fixation on the black sun.
Yes.
The things the sun Saul is going through right now. It's not just a bunch of colors in the sky for people to go, oh, look. It's because the sun is being extremely temperamental. Yeah. And when it gets extremely temperamental, there's gonna be some changes made. Yeah. There'll be some changes made. And they want those changes because there's even a school of thought among neo-cosmologists that the younger Dryas, about 12,000 years ago, was brought on by a solar storm. Others say an asteroid similar to the dinosaur extinction event, which was a lot earlier. But 12,000 years ago, the climate went back to being kind of an ice age. And it really changed the direction of, it's like before the younger Dryas, the big mammals dominated the earth. After it, only the smaller mammals survived, mostly. No giant sloths, no mammoths, although I think early humans hunted them to extinction. No saber-toothed tigers. It's like big became rare and small became typical. And that's just what the Black Lodge would want to see. Less powerful beings.
Yeah.
So if the sun is doing it, some people wonder why I cover solar events on my X feed. And it sounds like one of my wives. No, it's not that kind of feed. I don't feed them anymore. And we don't have alimony in this state. But,
oh, Lord. Lucky you.
Thank God Almighty. I tell you. My late friend Jim Mosley got involved. He was a very wealthy man at one time, but he didn't die so wealthy. He had a female pal.
Oh.
And they got involved in New Jersey, but he lived in Key West at the bottom of America. Sort of the start of Cuba if you swim real fast. But actually, don't ever try that. You can swim the other way, maybe, but the undertow will eat you alive. Trust me, I used to be a diver off Key West.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful waters, but if you go beyond a certain point, you don't make it to Cuba, you make it to Davy Jones. Not the singer from the Monkees, I mean.
Well, now they want to ask a lot of questions, but we got to get up out of here. Can we get you back in a month or so? We would love to have you on so we can.
I would be delighted. I'm kind of booked through June, but if you come up with something in July, and I can bribe you into doing it an hour later, because I'm a day sleeper, and in order for me to do your program at 7 o'clock, I have to wake up at 5 p.m. Go, come on, Alan, you can do it. Come on, Alan, take a shower. Cold, no. Here I am.
We'll definitely do a day broadcast for you in July. We'll set up a date, and I very much appreciate you. So much wisdom and knowledge shared today for a lifetime. I'm gonna have to go back and study a lot of things that you said, and we would love for this to continue and for you to build a relationship with this community over here, and everyone's giving you your applaud so you could bow now.
Isn't this the custom now? Started out with Khrushchev. I don't like you Americans, but this is what we do in Russia.
One more thing.
Then we shoot you.
One more thing before we go. That's funny. But donations. Where can they donate at?
Well, I do have a PayPal, and it's the same as my email address, which is Bishop, BISHOP 171, which is an EQ thing, at gmail.com. And it's identical to the PayPal. As I always put it, if somebody asks me about that, they rarely do. It's always welcome and appreciated, but never necessary. What I do because it's what I do, not because it is a money-making thing. Just my books, which you can buy from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all the finer booksellers online, as far as I know.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Make sure you guys get the books, and we can't wait to have you back. Until next time, my friend. Thank you so much.
You hang up on me. I don't hang up on people.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.